Hi, Aldersgate family. Lately, we've been hearing a lot of talk about God sightings from Randy and from Pastor Emily. And I wanted to tell you the story behind that. Years ago, when we were stationed in Colorado, I was invited by a friend to go to church with her. It was a Methodist church. I had been going to a different church, and she just thought it would be fun to join her. She even convinced me to go to a Sunday school class with her, which is no small feat. We went to the class. It was called Signs. And every week we talked about the signs in the Bible of God's presence. And every week we were given an assignment. There were 5 assignments. One of them was to write a letter to someone you haven't seen or heard from in a very long time. The next one was to say something nice to someone. The third one was to do something nice for someone, unbidden and unrecognized. The fourth one was to do something that made a difference. In other words, take part in something. You didn't have to commit to it, but you just had to do something that you wouldn't normally have done. And the 5th thing was to give away something you love. I went to the class. I enjoyed it very much, but partway through the class, my father died in a terrible accident, and I left to join my family. But when I came back, the class, they had one more class, and I met with them, and the class had made me a poster of a big rainbow, and they had signed it with various poems. That sealed that class in my heart and in my mind. The assignments in the class all had biblical references. We talked a lot about the signs of God that are in both the Old Testament and the New Testament, and it was very enlightening. Fast forward to another assignment, and I was involved in my church and asked to be a prayer pal for a confirmation class. The girl that asked me to be her prayer pal was a very, very beautiful young girl who never met a mirror she didn't like. She constantly was preening and primping, and yet she really didn't have a lot of confidence. I didn't know what to do. The class was it's like ours, a school year long, and I had to meet with her once a month. So I decided to pull those 5 assignments out. The first one we did was to write a letter to someone we hadn't seen or heard from in a long time. Now, for a 12-year-old, that's a time frame is a little different. I wrote a letter to a friend, and she wrote a letter to her grandmother, who she hadn't seen since that summer. But the effect was the same. Her grandmother was overjoyed at having received some kind of a letter from her. And it was the beginning of something that changed her. The next thing was relatively easy. Say something nice to someone. And it had to be sincere. But what it did was it made her stop looking at herself and to look at other people. Win-win. The third thing, to do something nice for someone without being acknowledged for it, was a little trickier, because she was still in that age group where you want to be acknowledged for everything you do. And yet she did it. She did it. The 4th thing was to take part in something that made a difference. And she did that too. All of these things made her stop looking at herself and start looking outward. The last thing, unfortunately, was to give away something you love. Now, I have to get something to show you, because this was an interesting thing in and of itself. At that time, everyone was very, very interested in these little puffy things. I don't remember what they were called, but she had received one from a friend of hers, and she said, I'm going to go get one of these and give it to someone. And I said to her, no, you have to give that one away. And that was a stopper. She said, no, that someone gave this to me, and it was really important to me. This person's really important to me, and it means a lot. And I said, and that is the spirit in which you must give that one away. And this is it. She gave it to me. It was a wonderful experience for a wonderful girl, but it changed us both. The little class that I had taken at the Methodist Church in Colorado had sort of morphed itself into a life lesson class for a teenage girl. Again, we were transferred, and we arrived here, actually. And here at Aldersgate, I was searching for a way to engage with a girl that I was also asked to be a prayer pal for in a confirmation class. So I went to Jason Michelli, and I told him about this class and these things that I had done. He was really excited about it. He wanted to know more, and I wanted to know the biblical context, which we could use. We both tried to find the class, but we couldn't find any reference to this class called Signs in the Methodist curriculums. But this was before Jason had cancer and before Jason wrote any books. Jason did a lot of research, and he couldn't, but we stopped talking about it, and we couldn't find the class. So a girl asked me to be her prayer pal, and I met with her, and the first thing I said to her, let's write a letter to someone we haven't seen or heard from in a long time. She said, oh, we're doing that in our confirmation class. So I marched to Jason's office, and I said, what is this? He based his curriculum on that class. The funny thing is, no one can find that curriculum. Even Jason himself couldn't find that curriculum. When Annalise arrived here, we had tried to find it, and nobody has it. But the little class from the Methodist Church in Colorado had morphed itself into a confirmation class. Well, Annalise asked me to help her teach her confirmation class. I told her about these 5 things. We discussed them. She said she really liked the idea, but she didn't want to base a curriculum on them. She had a much more robust curriculum to use. And so what she did was she created a poster that said God sightings. And it gave 5 examples of how you could be a God sighting. It's a little tricky to explain that to pre-teenagers, actually, to explain to them about writing a letter or doing something nice for someone. When they talk about God sightings, they look outward, they do, but they're looking outward at the things that happen to themselves. So it's hard. We push, we try to make it happen, and in many ways we're successful. They look for God sightings everywhere, and they exist everywhere. So the little class they took on signs at the Methodist Church in Colorado had morphed into a poster that Pastor Randy saw when he walked into the confirmation room. He said, yeah, God sightings, I like that. And he brought the whole concept to all of us, to look for God sightings. Interesting. Interesting, isn't it? So I'm going to challenge you to this week or anytime, write a letter to someone that you haven't seen or heard from in a long time. You can send an email or a text message. The effect will be the same. The last time I did that, I actually wrote a letter to a friend, and she called me and she said, the funniest thing, I was just thinking of you today, and I went to the mailbox and there it was, a letter from you. God kind of prepares things along the way, don't you think? Okay, the second thing to do is to say something nice to someone. In our world, the way it is right now, we don't really see a lot of people, but you could say, hey, I like your mask. Where did you get that mask? The third thing would be to do something for someone unbidden and unacknowledged. You know, this past weekend, I went for a walk. When I came back, there was a little plastic cup on my front steps with some roses in it. I have absolutely no idea who sent those, but I appreciated them a great deal. And the fourth thing is to do something that makes a difference. I haven't done this yet. Maybe I should think a little harder about it, but I bring food over to the bin at door number 3. Maybe the next step is to actually go to Rising Hope and ask how I can help. There are many things we can do to step out of our comfort zones and make a difference. And the last thing, give away something you love. My friend Hetty had a bunch of Christmas decorations that she loved. I think she loved them because they evoked memories of wonderful Christmases. She put them all out and asked her children which ones they wanted. They didn't want any. So she talked about them to me, and I said, maybe you should give them away. I mean, they're still good Christmas decorations, and maybe it's their job to evoke good Christmas memories for someone else. And she did. Just gave them away. It's not so hard to be a God sighting. It's not hard to see them. God is everywhere, including in us. So I challenge you. Don't just look for God sightings. Be one. And may the peace of the Lord be with you always. Amen.